Hello, this is Reverb Audio, and this is my recommendation about setting up a recording studio. So this is something that I was asked to talk about, and it's been a really long while ago, but I don't want to postpone it anymore. So with my recommendation, my recommendation is really about from the standpoint of listener, that as a music lover and as someone who's been listening to high quality audio systems for decades, what are my thoughts about this issue, that if I were to set up a recording studio, what would be my recommendations for that. And first of all, step 0 is the reality check. And when you are starting out your recording studio, you have to know, and probably you know it much better than I do, is that low fidelity sounds. So if you compress the heck out of your recordings and make it so that sounds good on boomboxes and MP3s, you will be able to make a living probably much better than recording with at the highest quality, because very few people have high quality listening gear, and most people will appreciate low fidelity. So what I would recommend really, if I would do a recording studio myself, is that I would adopt this workflow. First, create a master which is uncompressed, or that has the absolute minimal compressing absolutely necessary to make that recording possible, and use as little EQ on it as possible. Of course, I would make the studio with 2 microphones only, left channel, right channel, and set up to capture the 3-dimensional audio space of the for the recording, because this is how our ear works. So our ears do not hear in 3D. So if you are using more than 2 microphones, you are not making it easier for the ear to capture a 3D image. The hearing is strictly linear. There's a left data stream from the left ear, a right data stream from the right ear, and neither of those have any indication of what was the exact 3-dimensional spot where those sounds originated. Our brain is the one that recreates the 3-dimensionality of the sound by comparing left channel to the right channel and comparing the harmonic distortion patterns, time delays, and phase shifts between the two, and also not just between the two, but between individual waveforms. So it is an extremely complicated calculation which far exceeds our best computers' capabilities that we have today, but our brain is a neuronal computer which is far more powerful than even the Google server park that we have. However, there's one thing about the human brain, is that it is adaptive. It learns. And that's why we cannot make generalizations about the human hearing, that we can hear this or we cannot hear this. Can we hear phase shift or can we not hear phase shift? Because it depends on you, whether you have trained your ears to hear it or not. And we have the same hardware, but the way it works is completely different from silicon processors, from binary computers, where we run the same software on the same hardware. In the case of human beings, the software that we run on our common hardware is beyond extremely adaptive, and it depends entirely on learning. And that's why the number one aspect for all audiophiles is to pay attention to your learning skills on how you hear the sound, improve it, make it better, and that's when you will be able to appreciate high quality music, not just from recordings, but from real life musicians as well. And this is the difference between a dilettante listening to a music and a violinist listening to the music, or like a master violinist listening to the same music. The input that reaches the brain is the same, the structure of the brain is the same, but the learning makes a whole different spin on it. What the conscious part of the brain will be able to perceive from the same message we are getting. And that's why I recommend to use only 2 microphones, because they will capture the 3-dimensionality of the sound the best way to get played back from a 2-channel system. And if we are increasing the number of mics, we are, and also increasing the number of loudspeakers to play it back, we are compromising the ability of the brain to process a natural 3D image out of it. So, and then, so this was your first master that you should make from those 2 microphones. Absolute minimal compression, and hopefully no EQ. You want to set the microphones in such spots and make sure that the seating arrangements of the players is such that they present natural tonality for the microphones. So you take care of everything, that it should happen naturally, have the musicians play and record them in one take. There is no monkeying around later on that, oh, the violinist forgot to show up, we'll just place him in later with a separate track. No, have them play together, because it will sound different if one instrument is just added on later. Then they will be in a different acoustic space. If there's no other instruments present where the violin plays, then the violin will give out a different sound, because the other voices, other instruments, the sound waves coming out from them are resonating, vibrating the body of the violin, and it will modulate the sound the violin is playing. And when the violin is playing alone, there is no modulation occurring, so it will sound different. And then the second, what you want to create is that compressed and colored master that is optimized for low fidelity gear, and probably that's the one that the band or the studio or the producer, you are the studio, sorry, the band or the producer will demand from you. And they can demand different levels of processing, whatever they want, you can do that, and there you guys, there you go. And maybe if they want multi-miking, you can do multi-miking, but even in that case, I recommend to create a version where you have only 2 microphones happening. And then just provide both of them to the artist and decide what they want to do with it. And yeah, I would say that you are working more, but in any way you need to create a good uncompressed master first. If that original recording sucks, there's any number of things toying around you can do with it. You can't fix it. If the source sucks, there's no way it will be a great recording. You have to make a great recording with starters, for starters, and then you can play around with it to suit the taste of the musicians and the producers. Now, the next part is the monitoring gear, what you should do to master and create the mix, the final, what you are ordered. I think the big mistake that many studios do is that they use a single monitoring system, and then if it has a strong personality, then the resulting mix will have a very strong personality to it. And I think, for example, if I look at different labels, like Chesky Records springs to my mind, that they have a really strong personality to their recordings that stands out from the majority of the labels. And and that's why, and the result of that is that if you have specific types of setups, then it will sound fantastic. But if you are not do not have those specific brands of audio gear, it will sound weird and unnatural. So what I really suggest how I would do about it is I would set up different types of monitoring gear and have a listen to different scenarios, how people will hear it when they use different kinds of systems. And your job is to make sure it sounds good on a range of systems, and your recording that you are getting out is not just a one-trick pony. And three easy choices that you could be doing if you are starting up your recording studio and you don't have unlimited funds. You have to work around a realistic budget. And there, one thing is that a pair of microphones will help you, because you don't have to buy a pair of each microphone in the world because the band wants this specific harp microphone or whichever guitar microphone to pick up the guitar. And on a budget, as a starting recording studio, you cannot afford to buy hundreds of microphones. Just get a pair of high quality wide band microphones which can pick up the entirety of the soundstage, and then you can put together three simple systems to listen to. I will start with number 3, for example, a Genelec 8040A active monitoring loudspeaker, and you can use that for checking for a consumer mix. That will be kind of similar to what a lot of people will hear at home who have most people use solid state amplifiers, and that will be like a good quality representation of what most people would hear at home. And I would really recommend that when you do that final consumer mix, to make that compressed and colored version sound best on this system. So voice it with that primarily. And when you have your uncompressed master, uncolored master, you can check how good those are with these two different systems. System number 1, you can easily build this at home, a void pipe Darling amplifier combination. This would be something like a purist, like an extreme purist system, a single-ended zero feedback tube amplifier and high efficiency loudspeaker combo, and it's a single driver situation, so you can test ultimate mid-range clarity and low-level detail on this setup. Yeah, this is not the best if you want to listen how they push the extremes of loud drumming or like huge bands. This is not your system to test for that. This is when you test for like a vocal or guitar, chamber music, that type of scenarios. It will give you the deepest insight on whether you did a good job on that or not. And for how to test for high quality, very dynamic, very demanding material, something like an Altec 602B or any Altec speakers or voice of the theater speakers or high efficiency JBLs. That's a really good way to test dynamic range, and you can get amplifiers. I would recommend, if you want single-ended, pushing out high enough power to really test the extremes of dynamics, that would be really expensive. So I would recommend the push-pull amplifiers, like for example 807 power tube, you can make build an amp which is quite cost effective. My recommendation is run those tubes in triode mode without any feedback. So when you have these ultra high efficient loudspeakers, then zero feedback triode mode push-pull amps will be matching those extremely well, and you will be able to enjoy low-level details and tonality and timbre of the sound. And yes, as many would point out, like Altec 602B or 604, these are, and those types of drivers, these are concentric drivers, and the traditional crossover that these are made with is a compromise solution, so you will hear a coloring in the sound, but do not take this as a big negative, because most people, when they listen to their systems, they, surprise surprise, most of the crossovers we have in our loudspeakers have problems with them. So this is one aspect that you can look for, that if the crossover is not perfect between your highs and the lows, then how will your recording turn out? And when you want to check for the clarity of the mid-range and the transition between mids and highs, check it on the void pipe Darling system. When you want to check the dynamic range and extremes, then you check it on this system. And when you want to check the what a general consumer will hear, you can track it here. So I hope this was useful, and just have a wonderful time starting your recording studio, and it's a journey. You will figure it out for yourself, and but it will be beautiful. I'm really jealous that this is happening, that this can happen, and I wish all the best for it. Have a wonderful day. Please like, subscribe. Bye bye.